Thank you, and good morning, everybody. It is, in fact, Tuesday, January 11th. This is the first meeting of Finance and Administration for the County of Renfrew. It is 9:30, and I'm going to call this meeting to order and welcome all of our new members. As we gather this morning, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the First Nations. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history. We are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. And at that, Connie, has roll call been taken?
Through you, Chair, yes, roll call has been taken.
Thank you very much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? I see none. And the minutes of our October 13th meeting were approved by the Warden and the CAO. We have no delegations this morning, so at this time I'm going to go to page 2 and pass this over to our CAO. Mr. Kelly, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Excuse me. A little choked up today. So starting on item number 1 on page 2 is a repeat, I guess, if you will, from the Health Committee yesterday of a letter that was received in response to former Warden Robinson's letter to the Health Unit inquiring about the closure of the offices at Renfrew County Place. For those new on this committee who weren't on Health Committee earlier this week, the Health Unit had an office or has an office currently at Renfrew County Place in Renfrew that services, for the most part, the Renfrew catchment area. They provided notice of their intentions to not renew their lease as of July 2023, and that was done earlier this fall. There was concerns by the Warden and this council on how that area would be served if those offices were deemed closed. Since that time, this letter and a subsequent letter that was shared at the Health Committee that is now up on the screens in front of you is an excerpt from a health report received in November from the CEO, expressing that don't worry, services will continue in a very much improved fashion, I guess, in the Renfrew catchment area, and they are currently searching with a study group another office space to occupy. So that is ongoing, and so those constituents in Renfrew and Douglas and everywhere else should have their fears allayed. So that's item number 1. Item number 2 is an information item from the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. This is their semi-regular newsletter for your information. The Wardens Caucus, of course, is made up of the 13 upper-tier municipalities in Eastern Ontario. They meet very regularly. Currently, former Warden Robinson is still chair until this week. The inaugural meeting is starting tomorrow, and the election of a new chair of the Wardens Caucus will take place on Friday. The role of the Secretary-Treasurer falls to the CAO clerk of that municipality. So Mr. Morrow and now myself have been the Secretary-Treasurer of the Wardens Caucus for about 3 years. And Mr. Foss has been the Finance Chair for the last couple of years. So it's been an exciting time, but again, the meetings will happen this week, and new priorities for this new term will start to take place in March. So again, that item is an information item. Item number 3 is an update from EORN. EORN, of course, is our partner in bridging the gap on broadband and cell coverage in Eastern Ontario. The County of Renfrew funds EORN, along with, again, the partner municipalities of the Wardens Caucus. I've also had handed out an update to you that was received last Friday, which gives an update on the Cell Gap project. And I'm sure the chair who sits on the EORN board will elaborate when it comes to that point. But there are several towers in the mix and different phases of the Rogers towers going up. Earlier I was asked, does this include any bell towers or other infrastructure taking place? No, it does not. This is just the partnership towers that EORN currently has. I should back up, I guess, for the new members. EORN has, through an RFP process, partnered, if you will, with Rogers Communications to build cell towers throughout Eastern Ontario. I can't remember the actual build cost. Again, the chair might remember. But over the course of the next 5 years, they will be building several towers, and we will receive on a monthly basis updates of where these new locations will be, if they're ready, their state of readiness. You also might be aware that the county itself is working on at least one location on county-owned lands for one of these Roger towers, and you'll hear more about that through the Development and Property Committee going forward. Item number 4, if I could just ask that the presentation be put up on the screen. As has been the norm, the CAO's goals and objectives have been presented to Council on an annual basis. This was at the time of my hire in September, as of September 1st. These were presented to Warden Robinson for a look-see and an approval, with a mention to bring them forward to this council. So on your screen, you'll see overall goals, and I guess it came out a little smaller than it probably should have been. But there are 8 overall arching goals, and they're centered around each department. Those were not included. That was an additional slide that was not included in your package. But if you can go to the next slide, and again in your package, starting on page 15, a summary of some. I didn't put all of them in because we are in an open session, and some of them may constitute more of a closed type session item to be discussed. But these items highlight the objectives to reach the goals of my position over the next year at least, and stretch forward. For those that aren't aware of my contract, I am to be reviewed at 6 months, which will be the end of February, first part of March. So these will be, again, further discussed with you more likely in a closed session come the March session of Council. So again, those are there for your discussion and or questions. Item number 5, Chair, is an update on Roma. The Roma annual conference takes place on January 22nd to 24th. For those who are attending, are acutely aware of those dates. We have been awarded 4 of the 5 requests. We have not heard from the Minister of Health yet, and I've heard that the Minister of Health hasn't replied to any delegation request at this point. So we have dates for all of them. On Monday, our day is full. We basically start at about 11:55 and run through to about 3 o'clock. We have 4 back-to-back delegation meetings. They're 50 minutes in length. We usually get a knock on the door about 13 minutes and try to wrap things up. So we are currently busy with our department heads putting together the sales sheet, the talking points, and we'll be reviewing with the chair and the chairs and the wardens and those in attendance of how we will roll this out. So that will, once we get all that wrapped up, we will be meeting early next week to discuss our tactics as we enter the rooms on the 22nd to 24th. It's a great opportunity actually for Roma. I think there's a few new members going to Roma. Mr. Davis will be attending, Ms. Lapine and Mr. Perkins I think will be attending. So there's some good sessions. And we'll try to obviously make use of the best of the times, but these delegations are important to get to, but they take a lot of effort for 12 minutes, so we'll see how that works out. Chair, I will stop there before we get into bylaws and open up discussion for items number 1 to 5. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So we'll go back to information item number 1. Oops, my apologies. The RCDHU movement. Councillor Donahue, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At yesterday's, or for yesterday, I guess, Health Committee, there were attached to the committee report, as is part of the terms of reference, the minutes from several past Board of Health meetings. So on reviewing the minutes from the November 29th meeting, that's where the CEO's report that Mr. Kelly projected onto the screen was from. And I had asked him at yesterday's meeting to do that. And the reason being that, while I certainly appreciate the letter that was returned for the correspondence sent by Warden Robinson. It was essentially mirroring the letter that I had received in my capacity as the mayor of my community, expressing the same concerns. But I felt that the CEO's report more clearly articulates the commitment to having an office in Renfrew. And that was a larger concern, is what was going to be, how were the services going to continue to be delivered into the community, whether it was going to be virtual, whether it were going to be on temporary clinic-based rather than a permanent presence. So that's why I asked him to project the CEO's report from November, where it clearly confirms that RCDHU will have an office location, a physical location in Renfrew. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I know that a few of us on the RCDHU board couldn't attend yesterday for the inaugural. Councillor Brose, were you able to log in? And I know that obviously we don't have minutes from yesterday, but was there any update?
Thank you. Yes, I was able to attend, and it was the inaugural meeting. So the only thing that took place was the appointment of the chair, which is again Ann Akins, and the striking of the committees. So that was the only thing that was the only matter of business yesterday.
Thank you for that. A girl can help. All right, anything further on item number 1? Number 2, the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus newsletter. 3, EORN. I know I can just add that there were some delays. There's been duty to consult. We had crane operators that were on strike for a while. We had supply chain issues. Weather didn't help. But they are looking very forward to the early this year and into the spring of ramping right back up. And I know that in Renfrew County, a lot of these locations have already had their soil testing and all of that, so they're ready to go. So I'll have more information after our first meeting. We have yes, Councillor Giardini.
I was wondering, I realize that EORN must put this update out. Is it possible, or do we have anywhere where these locations are in Renfrew County?
No, we're, at this time, we do not have mapping that's not in closed session. Because unfortunately, the mapping is showing not only the locations that are already done, it's also showing, and I think there's been discussion about breaking them out. One of the challenges is the mapping has the ones that haven't been built yet that are still in the approval procedure. So that's been a bit dicey. Those are in closed session.
Okay.
But great question.
Thank you.
I will have an update after, yeah.
Chair, thank you. Through you. So EORN annually typically will be a delegation to a meeting, either council or committee. I'll update with Mr. Pine and Ms. Severson and Mr. St. Pierre now later this evening to see when they can make it available for them. But yes, it's to further elaborate. I shouldn't need to, but they are still negotiating with a lot of these places, so they will bring that map to us enclosed, but it can't be shared at this point.
Thank you. Anything further on EORN? Seeing none. The CAO's goals and objectives. The Roma Conference. I too have heard that the Minister of Health has not replied to any delegation requests, so I don't know what that's all about. Oh, thank you, Councillor Doncaster. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious if we could get the schedule of those delegations, because there's other lower tier municipalities may have conflicts, so people that are there may or may not be able to attend some of them.
Through you, Chair. Yes, it's being distributed likely today. Now, we just got the last, I think it was last night, Rose, I think we got the last meeting time and location, so it'll be distributed later today.
That's the other frustrating thing. I have all my times for my delegations, but I don't know what rooms we're in. We just run around the Sheridan. All right, anything further on Roma? Then we will move on to bylaws.
Thank you, Chair. So item number 1, as we've done, I'll read the recommendation. We'll get it on the table, and then we can have a discussion if that's fine by you. That the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that Bylaw 8510 as amended, a bylaw to govern the proceedings of the Council and committees of the County of Renfrew, be revised at the next session of County Council to amend Section 6.1, electronic participation in meetings, with the following changes. If you'd like me to read the whole bunch of changes, I can. I'll read them into record just to have. So, including the preamble, the preference for meeting attendance will continue to be in person. However, there are circumstances that may prevent a member of council from physically attending at the meeting. The change here would be if the chair of the committee is not attending the meeting in person, then the vice chair will be asked to chair the meeting. Where those situations occur, the following shall be the guiding principles. The change in this one would be item A3, a member is ill or injured with the change or has other health-related concerns. I had a typo, as was mentioned to me. It should not be IE, it should be EG, a significant rise in airborne viruses. Item A4, a member has scheduling conflicts that preclude traveling to the meeting location. And item N, which is a new piece, in the event of a limited agenda or for a special meeting, a single issue, requirements, a standing committee or an ad hoc committee may choose to meet virtually at the call of the chair in consultation with the clerk and or appropriate department head. That is the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. So I'll get a mover and seconder to get it on the floor. Councillor Brose, Councillor Doncaster, discussion. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the preamble, in bold, it says if the chair of the committee is not attending the meeting in person, then the vice chair will be asked to chair the meeting. In reviewing the attached 6.1, which can be found on page 18, I note that in item 6.1J, it speaks specifically to this, that I don't know, it is redundant to have it both in the preamble and in this, because I think it might perhaps be more elegant to include that in item J, wherein, as it states right now, in the absence of the chair at committee, section 74G of the procedural bylaw will apply. The vice chair will assume the position of chair for the remainder of the meeting. And I think that we have done this, and I think that it is a challenge wherein just being able to visualize the chamber with that deep view is an enormous challenge. So rather than, as it says now, assigning it to the vice chair, what I can bring forward to committee to give consideration to amend is that 74G, and just bear with me one moment when I go to that, it does allow that in the absence of the chair, the vice chair shall be the presiding officer. It then goes on to state that if the vice chair, in the absence of the vice chair, then the procedure is that a presiding officer is by a vote drawn from the members present. And I had suggested to Mr. Kelly that if we had simply amended section 74G, that we insert the word physical in the physical absence of the chair or the physical absence of the vice chair, then I think that would perhaps be a more elegant solution. That section 6.1 just makes direct reference to section 7.4 rather than writing it in again. So I would move that it be amended such that wording be changed. I don't know, is that, if the clerk of the meeting got my comments?
Chair, if I just clarify, there's two things that you had mentioned in terms of an amendment to the motion, is deleting the bold, if you will, on page 4 of your agenda, the bold in the preamble to be deleted. That's what I understand. 6.1J, I had understood through conversations, is that 6.1J would be in the physical absence of the chair. We didn't insert the word physical for the word absence. And then further in 74G, again, the repetitive nature of it, in the physical absence of the committee chair, or in the physical absence of both. So we're just looking to insert the word physical prior to the word absence.
That's correct. And if I may, so I've drawn up on my screen now, the 74G is the specific item in the procedural. As it is currently reads, the committee chair shall preside or alternatively the vice chair upon request of the chair. Then it follows up, in the absence of the committee chair, the vice chair shall, or in the absence of both. So my recommendation is that, yes, number one, it be removed from the preamble. I don't think that it is necessary to have in the preamble that in the actual 6.1, we insert the word physical presence, and likewise, we can delete the second sentence of 6.1 that specifically then assigns it to the vice, and instead directly go, in the physical absence of the chair, you go directly and take guidance from 74G, and that's 74G at each place where it says, in the absence, that it to be preceded by physical absence. And if that makes sense, I know that's difficult to...
It does, and we haven't invoked 74 into any meeting because I tried to chair finance and admin from home, and it was almost impossible. Like, you can't see people's hands up, and people are yelling at you on the screen that person's got their hand up. So no, I totally agree with that. And yeah, it does make it cleaner, as long as the mover and seconder are okay. Councillor Doncaster, please.
I'm wondering if we're creating another issue if the meeting's virtual. So we're putting the word in physical, but if the meeting's entirely virtual, then physical doesn't mean anything.
If I can, the preamble, or at least, as I said in the report, philosophically, we would like to have at least the chair present at all meetings. And if the chair cannot be present, then the meeting shall not be virtual in its entirety. And that was the intent. But if that's not the wishes of this council, then we can have that conversation.
Can you repeat that? I missed that, Craig.
That the chair shall always be present, or a chair always be physically present in the meeting location.
Just for clarity, and my intent is not to get too into the weeds, but I think we need to be careful. The chair is appointed. The striking committee appoints a chair. The chair and the presiding officer are two distinct things. Almost universally, the chair is. This is now making provision for a special set of circumstances where they are not able to be physically present. As to a completely virtual realm, which we did experience for almost 2 years here at the county, I'm not sure, I had not thought it through as to what the wording specifically would say. I think certainly as we would work towards council at the end of the month, consideration might be given to that. In the alternative, I think that we can set aside the rules. The other thing is, it would seem absurd that if no one is physically present, that the chair couldn't be either. I mean, and it certainly was in the virtual realm. The platform that we utilized made it eminently possible for the presiding officer to do so when everyone is right there. The challenge is when we are not in the virtual realm as a totality, it creates an enormous challenge. So I don't know. I am making the motion to make those changes. As to any other, whether that is something that could be a supplementary direction to staff as to investigate.
Or, as you just said, we suspend the rules if we're going completely virtual. So if we had a significant weather event in February and none of us could get to this building, we could suspend the rules at that time. Yes, Councillor Donoghue.
There is, and I know my intent is not to bog this down, we still have in our current procedural right at the very end that has not been rescinded or revoked. There is a special set of circumstances essentially for emergency that might actually address the concern raised by Councillor Doncaster. I wonder if we just take a moment, if Mr. Kelly could review that. In the absence of that, what I would suggest is there could be another item in 6.1 that speaks directly, should the entire council be held in the virtual realm, something to that effect.
Thanks. we have quite a few new members that, you know, when we were doing all of it, and I'm sure you experienced this in your own, oh, well, I guess you're brand new, Dave, but when you're all on the screen, it's fine. But if you look at that monitor when I'm not speaking and you see the chambers, it is virtually impossible to chair. So I think that Councillor Doncaster brings up a very good point. I was vamping here, Craig, to give you a minute to look it up.
Yeah, I can't find it at the, I'm looking to Rose. Well, that's the protocol. It doesn't speak, sorry, page 40, yeah, page 47, which is your Schedule B of your procedural bylaws states, it talks about the protocol, but it doesn't, yeah, see, it's the same thing the attendance is, and this is where we've grabbed a lot of the preamble was. The warden, the clerk, the finance director, and the deputy clerk will be in attendance. It will be in attendance in the council chamber. So it's always the intent to have the leaders of the corporation in this room or at the meeting location.
And I get the intent, but what if we can't?
You cancel the meeting,
Or that?
right? Or you move down the chain until you find someone that can be physically able to do that, and that person is designated. It's a little tougher with a warden's position, but.
Yes, Councillor Donahue.
If need be, I think a fairly simple solution might be if we define in this emergency electronic meeting protocol, if we define what attendance means, that would then override those issues when we're not. You know, I am that we never again have to get into the trauma that was the Zoom, 24 months of Zoom. It would involve a further amendment, but I think that, I mean, I'm still standing on the motion that I've introduced on the changes.
Are you making a friendly amendment just to remove that line?
To remove which line?
If the chair and committee in the preamble.
No, there's several amendments to it.
3 specific
okay.
elements to my motion. So, and it has not been seconded, by the way.
Yes, Councillor Doncaster.
I will second it.
There you go. All right. So we have to vote on what is already on the floor. No, we can vote on this. Okay. So we're voting. Does everybody understand? Oh, no. Sorry, Warden.
Sorry, just because the conversation has wandered around a little bit, can you just read the, if you don't mind, please? Read the motion.
I was just going to suggest that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as I understand it, the motion is that I guess we can say it, the word or the sentence in the preamble that begins with, if the chair of the committee is not attending the meeting in person, then the vice chair will be asked to chair the meeting. That item is to be removed. The motion also includes that the words physical before the word absence in item 6.1J, and the word physical also appears in item 74G before the word absence in the second sentence, and twice in the second sentence and in the third sentence. That's what I understand the motion.
Did everybody get that? We know what we're voting on? All right, so I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that carries. Councillor Donahue.
A second motion to amend such, let's not say it's not a motion to amend, and perhaps direction to staff is not going to require a motion to investigate the discussion vis-a-vis how this would function should the entire council be held virtually.
Yes, I think staff direction is okay for that, right, Craig? Absolutely. Excellent, thank you. All right, anything further on electronic meetings? Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly through each of the iterations on electronic, I have always approached from the perspective of cautious incremental change. What I would suggest is that the changes to item 6.1A4 essentially are throwing the doors wide open. A scheduling conflict is not defined, so it could be anything. My concern with that at each step along the way as we've considered changes to the bylaw is, in my estimation, this is diminishing and deprioritizing council, that other scheduled issues would take precedence. This is what we are all certainly elected to do. I think that a member having scheduling conflicts, that could be anything. My dog stepped on a nail. I have a cow having calving problems. These are things that crop up, and they certainly have cropped up in the first 4 years that I was at County Council. I don't think I attended the April meeting because of a deluge of work at my own business, but I made the decision which was the priority. And I think that that should be the basis upon which this is advanced. What I will say is, and I was appreciative of the distinction that was made in the setting aside motion that was introduced, I think perhaps in June or August of 2022. It has suspended the rules except for it was only suspending for committees, i.e., I would allow that there is a difference between committee meetings and council meetings, that I certainly would support the wording as it is, i.e. scheduling conflicts if that was pertaining to committees. I can't support ultimately the resolution to make these changes if it is to be broadly applied to all business of the council of the County of Renfrew.
So I'm going to counter that, and I don't disagree with you on county council. But yesterday, I had every intention of coming to Health Committee until I realized that we had a planning meeting with county staff at Bonnechere Valley in the morning. Had I been able to log on, I could have logged on to Health Committee for about an hour to an hour and a half. No, sorry, an hour to maybe an hour and 15 minutes. But because I had to be back in BV for this other meeting and I was told that I couldn't attend Health Committee virtually, I just didn't attend Health Committee. And I would have there were some items that I really was interested in, obviously, and I don't disagree with you. I do prioritize the county above almost all else, but yesterday was already scheduled, and we moved Health Committee to the Tuesday, which is not ideal for some of us anyway, because we have our committee and council meetings on Tuesdays, but I would agree with you that maybe it's for a committee, but I think that this item is very important for situations just like that. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Where I would continue to disagree, I would have made exactly the same choice that you had, but you didn't have to be in Bonnechere Valley. You chose to be in Bonnechere Valley. I likewise would have made the same choice, but that is my choice to make because, once again, it is prioritizing which is the important thing to be at. And I do recognize that all of the committees have moved this week. I believe that was to accommodate the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. I think that is unusual. There might actually be one more when we move this, or I know that we have moved it sometimes when there was a conflict with Roma, et cetera. As I said, I do not disagree, or rather, I disagree with you. You did not have to be, or none of us have to be somewhere else. We make a conscious choice. In this particular instance that you have made, I would have made the same choice as you, and I would have chosen not to be here. That's all I'm saying to all members of the committee. Each one of these is a choice as to where is the priority.
Okay, well, my priority was planning with my council in the morning, and again, I could have logged on for at least an hour from my office in Eganville. But Warden.
Thank you. I really struggled with this because I am a traditionalist, and I really like people in the room. You know, you can make things happen as opposed to a hybrid model. I also have issues of trust in terms of, you know, trusting that people make the right decisions, which in my view is to be here. And so I And I'm aware of one instance where a member of a council in Ontario was reprimanded through their code of conduct because they were running two devices and in two meetings simultaneously. Now there was no indication that it was an attempt to double bill. It was, and I think the issue was primarily because they didn't disclose they were in the meeting, and there was some worry about the crossing of information. So I've really struggled with this, and so putting aside my feelings of trust about people not making the right decision or the right effort and being distracted at home, the reality is, I think, in 4 years' time, or even less, we're probably going to be doing more hybrid meetings than we're going to be doing face-to-face, simply because of the speed of what is happening in the municipal sector right now and all the conflicts. And so I landed on a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, the idea, okay, well, then everybody gets 2 a year, where they can take 2 penalties and stay at home or somewhere else. But that's a bookkeeping nightmare, so it's back to trusting people. So I'll be honest with you, begrudgingly, I would accept this. But if there's a better solution, I'd like to hear it. I just think we're at a critical time where things are changing so fast, and we have to adapt our processes like we did in March of 2020, where we suddenly woke up one morning and I think we had a 3-second instructional email on Zoom, and I think it was virtually the Tuesday before the Wednesday council meeting, and all of a sudden we became experts at the end of like 4 sessions of Zoom, and I think we're progressing that with the speed of everything right now. So as I say, I begrudgingly accept this as the only solution now that anybody's presented, just to allow us to function. I'll be clear, I don't like it, but we may be forced to do it unless somebody has a better solution. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, but after 24 months, people were still on mute. Anything further on this? Any ideas? I don't mind Councillor Donohue's idea of inserting for committee. I really don't. And I've always said that, if you have to attend virtually for a committee meeting, that's one thing, but county council, when we're all in the room, it's very difficult. And difficult for the warden as well. I'm here for you. All right, so friendly amendment to add?
I'll defer to Mr. Kelly. I wouldn't think that this is a friendly amendment. I think it is changing the...
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, this is
for
not...
For those who may not have experienced this, we're not going to take it out back. It's not that unfriendly.
We're all very friendly, sir.
But I do not think that it meets the standard of a friendly amendment. I think that it would require. So I would move that some wording be inserted into the body of 6.1 wherein that additional caveat or provision would apply only to committee meetings and not to council. I think actually we had wording from last June as to what when we had set that aside, we had only set it aside, I think, for committees. So again, it's probably best, I think, that we have the wording clear so that at least perhaps this would even be defeated. I don't know. I'll defer
Yes,
to...
Councillor Brose.
I will second that.
Chair, I'm just, I will never say I'm confused by second what, but I need to be clear on the motion. Is it to go back, because we can easily insert that all of these rules only apply to committee, or all these rules just apply to council, or some of these rules do and some don't, right? So that we just need some direction to come back to committee or council, I guess, at this matter, on where you want us, these rules to apply to. Thank you.
Oh, I was thinking just the scheduling conflict one would only apply to committee.
So I was understanding that. I would also like to hear if it was a scheduling conflict for municipal business or for any scheduling conflict. That was what I'm hearing as well. So I just want to be clear on what I'm hearing before I draft a motion.
Councillor Donahue.
So I will incorporate the comments that the warden had suggested, which would speak to the latter, i.e., do we want to restrict this to only municipal business as a particular issue? And item B, or the other one, which was the former, do we want to restrict this wider latitude to simply committees? I was speaking specifically to the former of just confining this wider provision to committees. I would leave it up to perhaps a discussion. I suppose that would require a motion. Where I was at with respect to Mr. Kelly's first question, with respect simply to confining this to committees, what I would suggest is that the amendment would be that item 6.1A4 remove the strikeout, and that there be a 6.1A5 inserted that would include the additional provision that would be allowed only for attendance at committees, committee of the whole, I presume, or subcommittee.
Okay, now I'm
have it
confused.
separated.
You do?
I do, Chair, if I can take a stab. To reiterate what Councillor Donahue has said, I absolutely agree, is that we revert to item number 4 being as is. We would take out the strikeout, leave it as it, and item number, it could be a 5 or it could be a, well, let's make it a 5 or even a new B or a new number that in all cases except for county council, a member may be permitted to participate in a meeting should they have scheduling conflicts or something like that.
Yes, I would suggest that A is speaking towards where we permit attendance virtually. So I think that this should stay absolutely within A and should be a subsection 5 that provides a singular exception for other than council meetings where there are scheduling conflicts. That is the motion that I am making. Presumably, Councillor Brose had in fact done a Kreskin on me and knew precisely where I was going, though I should be careful to ensure that that was in fact what he was seconding and not my grocery list.
That was what I was seconding. Thanks.
He literally didn't even blink. He just went, I second that. Yes, Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think back to what I said a number of years ago when we were looking at this before. Each and every one of us in this room has been elected at our local municipalities. By virtue of our position, we are a county councillor, and we have the right to represent our communities, represent the County of Renfrew at these meetings. Yes, if we have scheduling conflicts, it is our choice which one we choose to go to, but we should not have a procedure by law that forces us to make those choices. So in having said that, I would not support the amendment to this.
Well, and it was very difficult yesterday, so I had reached out and I said, could I attend? I knew my request was going to be denied. And then I realized that I was on municipal business and on county business. They were the county planners that came to Bonashire Valley, so maybe I should have invoked that, but it was difficult. But when you've got new members on your council, and this is orientation for something that is so important, and they absolutely need to understand why we use the planning services at the county, etc. That was my priority yesterday. I mean, and you've heard 3 of us in this room couldn't even go to, oh, sorry, not James, but Neil Nicholson. None of us could go to the Board of Health meeting. So I think we all prioritized where we needed to be. So at that, does everybody understand the amendment on the floor, by the way? Do you want Craig to do it one more time? Yes, okay. Craig, if you might.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just working on a bit of the wording, but I think that, well, as we know, the motion is to remove, seems redundant, to remove the strikeout, the proposed strike out of item number 4 and revert it back to as it was, and to remove the new wording, the new proposed wording, where a member has scheduling conflicts that preclude traveling to the meeting location, and to add an item 6.1A5, Roman numeral 5, that except for county council, the member has scheduling conflicts. I have to work in that wording, and but it's removing that county council isn't allowable, and I just have to word whether it's restricted. But I understand the intent. If everybody understands the intent for the motion, then by county council, we'll wordsmith it.
In other words, don't plan a doctor appointment for the last Wednesday in the month. Or in this case, yes, Councillor Giardini.
I believe we always have the option of having our alternate come to county council, but not at committee. Because I agree with Councillor Doncaster that we should not be forced to make decisions. There are some municipal council meetings that, as a mayor, you feel you have to be there because many times you've got the ball rolling for what's going on or who will be present at those meetings. So you always have the option of sending your alternate.
Thank you for that. And yes, especially when you've got new members and you're trying to do orientation, you're absolutely right, Anne. Councillor Donoghue.
I think perhaps, Madam Chair, that might actually, if it is specifically, and this was I think perhaps Mr. Kelly's latter comment, i.e. municipal business, that rather than simply removing the strikeout from item 4, which highlights specific external boards that you've been appointed to, if we also make a provision within that clause that it be for or business of the member's lower tier municipality. I.e. that it would be AMO, Roma, FCM, EORN, or a member's lower tier municipal.
That actually might be the cleanest.
Like that is then allowing for municipal business. And if there is any other conflict that a member has, now I don't think that in fact it is a conflict. It is absolutely a choice.
That might be the cleanest.
If I can, Chair, and through you, that was the intent of just leaving it open, and maybe it was too vague to leave it as scheduling conflicts, but that was the intent, is that if you're on a board or municipal business and you can't attend, because what we've heard from some elected is that they may or may not have a council meeting Tuesday at 10 a.m. And that means, but if they have a council meeting at 10 a.m., that means they can't make it physically here for a 1 o'clock committee meeting or otherwise. Council meetings are usually set in stone, but a committee meeting or a special meeting in your own municipalities may preclude you from traveling to Pembroke or the meeting location. So the intent was to incorporate municipal business into that. Scheduling conflicts, if you have another reason, was beyond that, but the intent was to talk about other municipal business that you're dealing with.
And mine yesterday was the perfect storm because we had already organized having the planning staff from the county come before our January 10th meeting, and then we got our schedule for here. So and then RCDHU. So yeah, I would say it should be any municipal business.
If I can, Chair, I don't want to, well, we're talking about this one item. The other discussion that has come up since we invoked the electronic participation for meetings is, what if I am on vacation but can make the time available for me during that time period to in a meeting? That's has come up several times over the last couple of years, and have had to push those rules aside or not allow that participation, or at least invoke that. So that opens that whole can of worms as well. But some people may be traveling for a couple months and otherwise, right? So, or winter down south.
But at that point, then Councillor Giardini's point is well made, that then you send your alternate.
again, Chair, that is the option and the prerogative of the council members.
And I understand what you're saying. So, you know, we're in Florida for a month, and I can make the time to come to all 3 meetings of the month virtually, but I'm on vacation. I'm not. I think we're getting into a slippery slope. Councillor Donahue.
Actually, yeah, and I had even considered as Councillor Giardini says, I don't know that the seat that I sit in is my seat. It is that seat. So it is not diminishing my rights in that my municipality has the capacity to appoint an alternate member. So it's not required of me to be here. It's not required of me to necessarily make a choice because there is an alternate member that could come. So I think the privilege and rights are extended as the warden has now incorporated into his stewardship of council meetings. I am no longer Councillor Donahue, I am the member from, and the member from can be an alternate. So I think that should speak to the concerns that Councillor Doncaster or Councillor Giardini have, is that the community that you represent can continue to have representation other than that individual member.
I think Craig's latest amendment, I think that's the way to go. Just add or local tier municipal business.
So, Chair, if I can just ask the mover of the motion that he withdraw that motion, or is he asking to amend that motion that he had? Because we're not actually now removing the strike-through. We're leaving that strike-through. Well, we're actually taking the strike-through out, so we are removing the strike-through, but adding just a simple, before the word et cetera, or other municipal business, and remove all the wording that's being proposed. A member has scheduling conflicts, blah, 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 and just leave it at that.
I would be satisfied with municipal business because I think that would capture, I mean, I know that AMO, Roma, et cetera, are already considered to be municipal business, but I think explicitly stating municipal business now would incorporate the example cited by the chair. So it is also not as expansive that it is permissible for any scheduling conflict, but it would be specific to municipal business. And if it is municipal business, in fact, as item number 4, then it would include, of course, council meetings. Item 5 was going to restrict to other scheduling conflicts.
Chair, I'm just looking to clarify that we're still looking, the mover of the motion is still looking to keep item number 5. We're just restricting these to committee meetings or all meetings other than council meetings.
In fact, if the committee is satisfied that municipal business, or with the insertion of municipal business into item number 4, then I don't think, from my perspective, I don't think that 5 is relevant anymore. I.e., we are now providing for municipal business, but there is not provision for others, which would still require a member to make the decision. Are they going to reschedule the other thing? Would they have the alternate member here in their place, or would they simply miss one of the events? So yes. And I don't know if we've already passed the initial. I don't think we have, right? So yeah, I would withdraw any of the motions that I have made with respect to additional permissibility for virtual attendance, and then re-engage on a proposed amendment. And I believe Councillor Rose was the seconder.
I would agree. I think I follow that all.
Okay.
He was aware of it before I actually said it. Again.
All right. Is there anything further?
So there still is that motion on the table then,
Yep.
Chair? Okay, so we're
Yeah.
just, so can I just clarify for the
Yeah,
all the
sure.
members?
Go ahead. A lot of clarification
Okay,
today.
that I understand that you withdraw, but you you're going to be making a new motion.
Just to be clear procedurally, I think once a motion has been moved and seconded, it is in possession of the floor. And I don't think actually that I can rescind my motion. I think that the committee would now have to vote on my motion to rescind, seconded by Councillor Brose. It is in possession of the body once it has been moved and seconded. So I don't believe that Councillor Brose and I have the authority to remove it. I think that the committee actually has to vote on our motion now to rescind that amendment.
So I know this is getting really confusing, but all in favor of the rescinding of the motion by Councillor Donahue and Councillor Brose? All in favor? And that passes. All right. Now, what do you want to clarify?
No, now I'm not clarifying. I'm introducing a new motion that within item 6.1A subsection 4 be included the language appended to AMO, Roma, FCM, or EORN, or business of a member's lower tier municipality, etc.
Ooh, can I add one more? Can we add EOLC?
Why don't we just say municipal business?
I'm fine. I mean, EOL, there is an etc. What I was speaking to specifically municipal was because of the basis, I think, of the conversation today. And I know that actually at yesterday's meeting, I think it prohibited both city members of the Health Committee from attending as well. So
there you go.
I think we could go on and on and on this, but if it was specific, probably if it was specifically municipal business, whether it is any of these agencies or whether it is the lower tier, I think then is captured within that, and it might be more elegant. So I'm in agreement with the suggestion by Councillor Doncaster that it simply be a member has been duly appointed to an external advisory board, advisory role or other municipal business. That's awkward too.
Do you have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Brose. Discussion. We all know what we're voting on? All in favor? That passes. Thank you. All right. The report as a whole. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, to accept the administration report? Moved by Councillor Donahue, seconded by Councillor Giardini. All in favor? And that passes. And now, does anybody want 5-minute break or yes? Okay, I'm getting the yes, 5 minutes. So we will resume at 10:35 and then we will move on to Mr. Foss's report. Thank you. Thank you, and welcome back, everybody. If you turn to page 20 of your package, I will turn this over to Mr. Foss, please, for your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the Finance and Administration Committee. Typically, when we meet as a committee, I am here somewhat by myself from the Corporate Services Department, but it's my pleasure this morning to have our management team join me. Item number 1 of our report deals with sort of the corporate services overview, sort of in a continuation of the orientation discussions that we had earlier with all of Council. And so without further ado, I guess on the screen in front of us, we do have a brief presentation that we've put together to highlight the services that are provided by the corporate services team. So those would include the Finance Department, Human Resources, Information Technology, as well as the Provincial Offences Court Administration Office. All of those services are provided here within the County of Renfrew building, 9 International Drive, 9 or 7 International Drive. The next chart is really, it's very difficult, of course, for you to see this, but this is our org chart. So each one of those 4 divisions, if we were to total up all of the positions, some are contract and some are currently vacant, but there are 33 positions across those 4 departments, all working here out of the County of Renfrew building. A theme that you may have heard in other committees, and you'll certainly hear in our committee, and later today I'll talk about it yet again. But of those 33 positions, 23 of those staff have only been with us for less than 3 years. And in some departments, the majority of those staff are very new staff. So we have experienced very considerable turnover in the Corporate Services Department. And I'll talk about another retirement when I get later on in the report today. So this is not unique to corporate services. It's certainly not unique to the Corporation of the County of Renfrew. But I think important to highlight that the folks that are providing these services are new to their position. And with that, if we go to the next slide, I would like to introduce to you Daniel Burke, who is our finance manager. And with your indulgence, Chair, I'll have Daniel speak to a brief overview of the finance department.
Great. Good morning, committee. If we could just move on to the next slide, I've summarized sort of the core components of our division. So we have 8 full-time staff. That includes the manning the main counter you all walked past this morning. And the finance department is roughly split into 2 groups of staff, or 2 categories. The clerks, who do most of the processing, and then the technicians who do the reconciling and reporting. So some of our core activities, of course, payroll and benefits processing. So the core of this operation is our bi-weekly payroll for our employees. There are approximately 800 active employees on any given bi-weekly pay. Our payroll period ends Saturday at midnight, and from that point on, we extract data from 4 separate scheduling systems and 2 manual processes. And we have to process that data and come up with a payment file that is in the bank no later than the following Wednesday. So a very deadline-driven operation and a very busy shop for the finance department, the payroll. Related to that, and what we're also currently working on, is of course the year-end payroll process, which will culminate in providing T4s to every employee. The bulk of this work actually goes into detailed pension reporting requirements to OMERS, which is what we're currently in the midst of working on now. Moving on from payables, we have our payables processing. This is slightly less deadline driven, but still a very busy shop, going through approximately 30,000 invoices a year and issuing out payments. So payables are collected, sorted, and then matched against our purchasing policy to ensure that we have the appropriate authorization. Given the volume of transactions we're dealing with, we run on a batch system. So every invoice we receive from the first of the month up to about the 15th, we pay in one batch, and then the remainder of the invoices received in that month will be paid in the second batch. And then, of course, we have a number of reporting requirements we do. From our monthly reports we generate internally for the other managers in the corporation, our quarterly reports to council, and then a number of specialized reports to various ministries and other third parties. I believe at the most recent AMTCO survey, we have an average, each municipality submits an average of 422 reports to the province every year. I believe we would be in that ballpark. So quite a number of very distinct reporting requirements going through this shop. Moving on from there, our tax policy work. So the county does not directly invoice property tax owners. That's done at the local level, along with very similar to school board taxes. However, we do have responsibility under the Municipal Act for a number of tax policy decisions. So to that end, we run a group that we call the Tax Policy Working Group, which consists of all the local treasurers. And we meet and debate a range of issues and options available for tax billing. And then we present those recommendations to County Council for approval, and they will then form your tax bills for the year. We manage the county insurance portfolio, which involves not only the negotiations for the yearly renewal, but also claims management. So we assess if each claim received merits forwarding on to the insurance company, or if we will handle it in-house with our own resources under our deductible. We have our banking relationships. So we are a member of a group where we jointly seek banking services. It's made up of a number of local government agencies known as the Renfrew and Area Administrators Group. The acronym RAG always stands out. And we use our collective size to get preferential treatment and rates from the bank. We manage our auditor relationship, which is a new relationship this year. After some 40 years, our previous auditor has resigned, citing our kind of growing complexity as well as their trouble staffing their office. So our new auditor is KPMG Perth Kingston office. We've already spent about a week together working on different things, and that went relatively well. And we have another 2 weeks booked in the March-April area. I should mention that our audit extends beyond the traditional annual financial statements. We have a number of specialized reports that require audit approval before they can be accepted by the ministry, the various ministries. So there's a lot of work in the background going on there as well. And we have our investment portfolio management, which is approximately $10 million in investments, and we ensure that that is invested in compliance with the rather strict guidelines in the Municipal Act. And the last item I'll touch on briefly, because we'll go into great detail next month, is our budgeting. We play a lead role in the budget development. So over the last several months, we have met with each of the departments to help them build a budget they will be presenting at their committee meetings next month, as well as taking the information from their 10-year capital plans and working that into our long-term financial plan. And with that, that's our brief overview. I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Daniel. Are there any questions for Daniel? Councillor Giardini.
Not a question, but a comment. The Renfrew and Area Administrators Group, years ago I was a member of the board of directors for the local hospital in Deep River, and they were able to join that, and they realized significant savings. So that's a good avenue for some of our bigger corporations to join. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Donahue.
Just speaking to Councillor Giardini's comments, I wonder if Mr. Burke or perhaps Mr. Foss, it's not just the savings, but I think just on the holdings, the deposits in the bank, we have a pretty significant premium. I wonder if you could, if either of the finance folks could speak to that.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I'd be happy to do that. So that Renfrew and Area Administrators Group began in the 1990s, the original program was designed for the members to pool their financial assets and receive preferential treatment. Not only would we receive preferential treatment on our monies that are on deposit, but we also had those folks that were in a cash shortage position, and they could essentially use the pool of resources from the other members in the Renfrew Area Administrators Group in order to borrow short-term financing at very preferred rates as well. That has changed over the 30 years that's been in place, and essentially the borrowing requirements are dealt directly between the member and the bank, so we're not pooling the short-term borrowing any longer. But we do receive preferential rates on deposit, prime less 1.5%, and that's on every dollar at the end of, it's on your daily balances. And so that certainly is advantageous. In addition, our services for the County of Renfrew, we pay no banking fees. So for an organization the size of ours, whether it's electronic transactions, EFTs or payroll, or all of those services that are very often fee-based at our financial institutions, we pay no fees for any of our banking services here at the County of Renfrew. Hope that addresses the comment.
Thank you for that. Anything further? Seeing none, we'll move on to Greg Belmore and Human Resources.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the committee. I'd like to speak to you today about our HR department here at the County of Renfrew and some of the services that we offer. So there's 7 full-time employees in our department. We have 1 contractor and 1 part-time administrative staff. Some of our areas of service that we provide to the County of Renfrew and our local lower-tier municipalities include recruitment, benefit administration, workplace investigations, performance management, discipline and dismissal, corporate policy creation and interpretation, labor relations, training and development opportunities, pay equity and job evaluations, as well as occupational health services. We'll discuss some of these further in the coming slides. So the next slide, please. It's about recruitment. So in 2022, we did over 195 individual competitions, and some of those competitions would be for more than 1 employee. We have some ongoing candidate pools in long-term care, so it was very busy for our department in terms of recruitment of new folks for the county. So when we're doing recruitment, we look at job descriptions, review them, create new ones, update them, and conduct the scoring for wage placement. We actually conduct the postings on internal, like our intranet, external, using multiple advertising avenues, as well as providing advertising recommendations to the different departments to give optimal exposure and be the most cost-effective during the recruitment process. We track all applicants for all the jobs. As part of the process, we may conduct behavioral assessments like DISC or PXT using external service providers. We create an application package that's provided to the hiring manager, which essentially is a matrix that matches the resumes received against the job description requirements to provide best matches for picking candidates to interview. We coordinate and participate in the interview process. In the last few years, this has involved a lot of virtual coordination and Zoom meetings, and resuming now more in person, which is great. We also assist with doing testing or presentation coordination, whatever the hiring managers requested as part of the process. We will also provide our recommendations on candidate selection, conduct reference checks, and prepare and offer the jobs, as well as drafting and getting employment contracts signed based on our templates. The next thing we can help with is benefits administration. So we respond to inquiries regarding our benefit coverage for our employees assisting with enrolling them and all the paperwork required, as well as benefit change requests. The County of Renfrew itself has 29 different benefits plans that we administer. We are the liaison with Cowan, who's our broker, and with Manulife, who actually administers the coverage for our plan members. We're also the lead of our Municipal Benefits Committee, which is similar in nature to the RAG, in that there are 16 lower tier municipalities or organizations that form a group to have purchasing power in terms of benefits. We also provide assistance to the benefits administrators and all of the members of the Municipal Benefits Committee to assist them with any questions they might have. And we also manage our employee assistance plan, which we'll talk a little bit further about in today's report. Workplace investigations. So we provide support to managers and supervisors in our organization to conduct themselves investigations, or they can be conducted by the HR team. We also provide recommendations on external investigations when they should be used, and we act as the liaison with an external investigator where required. We also provide recommendations on the outcomes of completed investigations in areas like training, performance management, discipline, or dismissal, as the case may be. Next slide, please. So in terms of performance management, we provide discipline and performance management recommendations following our progressive discipline policies. We prepare the actual performance improvement plans, letters of expectation, discipline or dismissal. We provide support in the actual performance management meetings, as well as manage the annual performance review process. Corporate policy creation and interpretation is a big area for us. We provide support with policy creation, revision, and interpretation. There are over 60 HR policies and procedures at the County of Renfrew. We ensure they remain updated in compliance with the legislative changes, specifically around the Employment Standards Act and the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and we review and update existing policies and procedures as needed. In terms of labor relations, we administer 5 different collective agreements. So we have 4 CUPE agreements and 1 with the Ontario Nurses Association. We assist with grievance management across the multiple steps, all the way to attending mediation or arbitration if they're not resolved before those stages. In terms of the collective agreements themselves, we help with interpretation of agreement articles, participate in the negotiation process, which we are about to begin with 2 CUPE units from the long-term care homes, and yesterday we were served notice to bargain from the ONA unit. We also help prepare letters of understanding in between the negotiation process on areas that require change in between the expiry dates of the collective agreements. We also participate in the labor management meetings, coordinating them, attending them, taking minutes, and taking actions out of the meetings. Another area we're focusing on is training and development, which includes the creation of training content, the delivery of county-created training materials both internally and to lower-tier municipalities. We're also working at coordinating group training sessions using external service providers to spread costs and make it effective for multiple departments or lower tiers to take advantage of the training. And we also manage the succession planning program at the county. In terms of pay equity and job evaluations, as part of the recruitment, we do review the job descriptions when we're looking at hiring new people or if there's changes to them, and so we do provide recommendations on those job descriptions as well as the compensation using the county's scoring tool. We also conduct compensation evaluations as mandated by council and on a triennial basis, I think, as well as on new and existing positions in line with county policies. In terms of occupational health, so we have an occupational health team as part of HR, which includes registered nursing staff that help with occupational health and workplace injury management, including our WSIB case management, as well as non-occupational health injuries. They assist with functional abilities and return to work in line with county policies, which aim to return our workforce as soon as it's safely possible, back to assist us meet our staffing shortages wherever they are across the corporation. Our RN is also able to assist with ergonomic support for any of the office staff and helps with the use of external service providers doing physical demands analysis across the corporation. We also undertake employee wellness initiatives, including our EFAP, and we're also responsible for health and safety. And we participate in the Joint Health and Safety Committee at the county and at multiple areas across the county as well. Another area that we broke into last year and we continue to expand is servicing lower tier municipalities. So we have a dedicated resource in our department to help lower tiers with HR issues. We have a fee for use and cost recovery basis. The fees are outlined in our user fee bylaw. There are 7 unbilled hours of service per year for each of the lower tiers, which many people are taking advantage of. And if we just switch to the next slide. So we create a service level agreement with the lower tiers with an appendix that outlines the services requested by the lower tier and which is then taken to their council for approval. We currently have service level agreements or have had or done work with the town of Renfrew, the town of Laurentian Hills, Township of Admaston Bromley, Township of McNabb Braeside, Township of Whitewater Region, the Township of Greater Madawaska, and the Township of Madawaska Valley. And we're actually next week going to speak to the town of Petawawa about how we can be of service to them. That concludes the HR section. I'll happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions with regards to HR? Councillor Donahue.
Just one. Thank you, through you to Mr. Belmore. I wasn't sure. I was too slow writing it down. How many competitions were there in 2022?
195.
Wow. Out of how many total staff?
There's about 900 people on the staff.
So over 20% of staff. Okay. That's what I thought, and when I was writing it, I thought, oh, that can't be the right number. It must have been 100 or it must have been 95. Anyway, thank you.
And I'm glad you asked for clarification because I thought you said 95 and then my brain said no. He said 195. That's incredible. Not so easy these days finding employees, eh?
And that's not unique to the county. It's the labor market is very, very tight right now, and it is difficult. As I mentioned, so 195 competitions. That's not necessarily a head count of 195. We have ongoing competitions. Director Blackmore can speak to. We never stop looking for PSWs, so that would count as one competition for PSWs, where we might hire 50 in a year plus. So it's a lot of people, which is evidenced by the number of T4s we process in the year.
Wow. Yeah, of course you'd have ongoing competitions for the hard to fill for Mr. Mike back there. My goodness. Okay. Anything further? I see none, and we'll move on to Chris and the IT.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to committee. The Information Technology Division is comprised of 5 full-time staff. We also have a vacancy in our administrative assistant position right now. We support the following hardware and devices and user accounts across the corporation. About 550 computers across all our sites. A little over around 22 network servers spread out through the corporation. About 184 smartphones and about 100 tablets. We also manage about 1,000 email accounts across the corporation, and about a little over 1,000 network accounts as well, along with 12 managed wireless networks throughout the various sites around the county. We manage over 7 terabytes of data countywide, management of the county's email system, and the corporate website as well. We average approximately 8,300 service requests a year from all our users. We're also manage the network and computer security for the corporation, which is an ever-evolving and huge task. We have to be correct every time, and the bad guys only have to get it in once. So it's something that we really take to heart, and we really try to make sure that everything is up to snuff and on the network and the security side of things. We also manage a cybersecurity training program for all our staff. We use an external service provider called KnowBe4 And what we do is we walk all our staff through this training program, and it's all done online. It's a video type training that they can all follow through and learn all the do's and don'ts and things to try and protect themselves, not only here at the county, but it also can help them at home as well from staying safe from all the potential hackers and all the malicious stuff that's out there. We also manage the data backup and disaster recovery solutions for all the county data and networks. Next slide, please. In 2022, the IT division spearheaded a major project for the corporation, and that being a digital strategy. We brought forth this digital strategy to County Council in March of 2022, and the digital strategy really came from the 2019 corporate strategic plan. We used some municipal modernization funding to support this project, and really some of the things that we were looking for with a digital strategy was, are we doing the right things with technology and digital? Are we making the right technology and digital investments? Is our information technology environment properly managed, maintained, secured, and able to support our clients? Is it cost effective? What are our future business needs, and is our technology environment equipped to meet current and future needs? Next slide, please. So way we focused the digital strategy was we did it over 3 phases. The first phase being this discovery phase, where we did background reviews. We included a survey to all county staff. We surveyed individual departments, and we also included a chance for the elected officials to be part of the surveys as well. The next phase was, phase 2 was to strategize. So this is where we refined potential digital opportunities, conducted digital readiness assessments, identified people, processes, and technology, and where we reviewed the needs and recommendations. And the final phase of the project was the planning phase, workshops, where we used workshops to identify the vision and the principles, develop a draft roadmap, including timing, budget, resources, and we prepared a draft digital strategy, and we reviewed and finalized the digital strategy. Next slide. One of the big things that came out of the digital strategy was a recommendation to shift how the IT division currently operates. So right now, the IT division is staffed with the appropriate staffing and skill sets, and that to be a solid utility. And by that, what we're meaning is we're making sure our networks are up and running all the time, that the security is in place, our computers are functional, staff can use them, efficiencies, and that sort of stuff. And that, unlike a house where you need a solid foundation, that's what we're doing right now. But the recommendation and the kind of the want is to move us more into a partner player mode. And that's the kind of the top of the triangle here. And really what this is going to involve is for the IT division to get more into the business solutions that the various county departments are using, and help them modernize them and make them efficient and that sort of stuff. So that's where we're hoping to move to. Next slide, please. Another one of the major recommendations that came out of the digital strategy was to develop an IT governance committee. And we did that in 2022. So with the IT governance, some of the things that we were looking here are some of the key facts are many municipalities have some level of IT governance and inherently recognize their governance could be improved. Before this, we didn't have any, so it was time that we did this. Some of the drivers for IT governance include regulatory compliance, increased demand with complexity and municipalities for digital transformation and online services, unrestricted or limited roles and responsibilities for IT governance, some risk management stuff, Implementing or improving IT governance is often identified as a recommendation from service reviews, but to implement IT governance can be a challenge. So for us, it's a work in progress. So we're going through that. Next slide, please. Some of the goals of the IT governance framework is to establish a clear mandate and authority for all technology decisions. And this is important in our IT governance committee, where when departments want to bring on new applications, new projects, it's coming forth into that committee, and then we can get regular progress updates on how it's going with deployment, that sort of stuff. It helps us engage directly with technology decision making. It better coordinates corporate technology and digital initiatives for which wider benefit can be derived. It allows us to establish a more rigorous evaluation and selection process for technology projects to ensure focus on high-value projects. It allows us to track the business benefits and value accrued from investments in technology, and it allows us to ensure more effective resource utilization within the IT and the businesses by focusing on corporately agreed directions. Next slide, please. Some of the solutions that can come out of IT governance is we're able to draw on past experiences and take a hybrid approach by picking elements from known methodologies and that works best in municipal environment. Use a minimum viable product model, determine current situation, you can ensure the foundations are in place and focus on what is required. It allows us to ensure the solution is scalable, and it helps it succeed through the executive committee, organizational support, and creating a sustainable government framework. Next slide, please. So with the digital strategy, there was a number of projects that our consultant recommended that we bring forward for our consideration. And actually there was over 40 projects. So there was quite a bit of stuff. And so maybe I'll just kind of highlight some of those projects that they recommended. So under the first category of IT governance projects was the actual IT governance framework, so which we started in 2022. They're recommending that we look at creating a cloud strategy and an AODA compliance policy. Some of the infrastructure projects that came to light was a cloud backup solution. We have implemented that in 2022, so we're well on our way with that. Some ongoing security enhancements and the cybersecurity program. So as part of the 2023 budget process, we're going to bring a recommendation through that we run all our county staff through the training program again. They initially all went through it back in 2018, so it's time for a refresher. And another major project that we're going to look at this year is to migrate our POA icon server. And some of the folks in the room may have heard it referred to as our Franken server. It's very, very old technology that we have to have in place to connect to a ministry program. So some municipalities have been successful in moving this technology into what's called a VMware environment. So that is something that we're planning for this year to try and get into the 21st century with this application. Next slide, please.
Were you even born when the server?
Maybe just. Some of our business systems projects. We were identified a human resources information system and payroll, a document management and records management strategy, a paramedic systems review, land and property management. When we get to these business systems projects, this is where we kind of have some gaps in our skill set right now. So that will also come through through the budget process as to try and fill some of those gaps for this year. and some integration and data projects, next-gen 911 planning, and a GIS strategy. So those were the kind of the highlights from the digital strategy in terms of the projects. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, and that's it. I'm done.
Chris was so excited there. Are there any questions with regard to IT? Councillor Giardini.
Through you, your cybersecurity training, you said that it's online. Is that suitable for the lower tier municipalities? And if so, is that available to us?
Yes, it is online. It's subscription-based, so every municipality, if there's an interest, could sign up with this provider, and you can walk through the training and have all your staff trained as needed.
That's a really good question. Is that a requirement for cybersecurity insurance?
Absolutely.
I'm glad you brought that up. Councillor Brose.
And further to that, is that insurance provider available for lower tier municipalities to approach?
And Madam Chair, through you, perhaps I'll tackle that one. So we'll talk a little bit later on about the County of Renfrew's insurance renewal for 2023 and general liability, medical malpractice, property coverage, all of the different programs. And one of our programs is cyber insurance coverage. That is a very scarce commodity for municipalities to be able to engage with in 2023, and it's nothing to do with the municipality, and it's the environment that you find yourselves in. We read about it on the news, we understand what the breaches are, we understand the financial components to it, the loss of business reputation, all of those sorts of things makes our underwriters very hesitant to offer that to all municipalities, and if they do, it's offered on the condition of they want to really understand your infrastructure, IT infrastructure, your security that you have in place, your technical expertise, all of those sorts of things. And even for us, County of Renfrew, with our resources and staff and our history, we're only offered a program this year on the condition that we make a number of changes, enhancements to our security structure. So for example, during the pandemic, all of our employees who were working remotely connected to our network through a virtual private network. In order for us to continue with our insurance program, we have committed that within the first quarter of this year, we will move to something called two-factor authentication to allow any employee to connect to the network from an external site. And two-factor, you might be familiar with it when you're doing some banking or some of these online services. They'll send you a text or they'll send you an email to confirm that you are who you say you are before you connect to the network. Essentially, that's what the County of Renfrew is going to have to do. Quarter one is for those employees working remotely, but later in the year, we need to consider all employees on a daily basis, even if you're in this building or any of our physical sites. Before you connect to our infrastructure, you will have to go through that two-factor authentication process. So that's just one of the requirements that our underwriters have for us to maintain coverage. But speaking with my peers, Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus treasurers, half of them don't have cyber coverage any longer because it's not offered to them by their underwriters. And those that have it are protecting it as much as they can to try and ensure that that backstop is in place should we have a significant breach or a malware attack. So long answer to the question, which was, can we get it? Yes, you can, but it's very tough to get your hands on it, and there are significant conditions before you're allowed to participate in the program. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that. Yes, it took our local CAO months to get it. It's very expensive, and yes, we did have to do some tweaks to our system to get the insurance. But it's out there. It's just, it's very, as Jeff said, it's a tough commodity. Anything further on IT? Warden.
Yes, thank you. I was looking quickly here and feverishly, but I do recall that in one of my reports to County Council late last year that LAS was working on a project with cybersecurity and insurance, and I think they have a pilot with 7 or 11 municipalities. So I will. I'm assuming I'll get an update at Roma. We have a board meeting, and failing that, we won 2 days after County Council. So I will bring back whatever information I have, and to Councillor Giardini, I provide a report whenever I have an AMO meeting. It's lengthy, but there's always lots of information in there. So I'll make sure I include that, and I'll ask the question specifically at the meeting.
That would be great. Thank you, Warden. Anything further on IT? I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but where are we with Next Gen 911?
It's not really something that the IT department has taken a step in.
Just seems to be taking a long time to, all right. And I think we saved the best till last. Ashley, do you want to take over for POA?
Sure, thank you, Chair and Committee. So the POA staff consists of 4 full-time and 1 part-time staff. We also have contracted out prosecutors at the time, at least. We do have a position that will probably be mentioned later that's coming up. So the provincial offenses, it was enacted in 1979. It consists of regulatory laws passed for the safety and health, well-being of our communities, and we administer virtually all provincially regulated charges. So not only driving related, we also administer things like laid by the Ministry of Labour, your Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Transportation, as well as traffic offenses up on the garrison. Within that, you have your Part 1 offenses, commonly your ticketable offenses that we are familiar with, Highway Traffic Act matters and things like that. Generally, the maximum fine for that is $1,000. Part 2 is those established by bylaws, so those are your parking offenses. And then Part 3 is the more serious charges, and those are summons to courts, and right now they are prosecuted through the Crown Attorney's Office. We are governed by strict conflict of interest guidelines overseen by the Attorney General, and we'll see on the next slides a little bit about that. And the next few bulletins are just a bit about our workload this past year. So we processed 9,245 payments. We used different methods of payments. We have online payment, pre-authorized, things like that. We issued 1,066 driver's license suspensions. That doesn't include court-ordered ones from the Justice of the Peace. We issued 1,139 collections notice. We also have 2 collection agencies that we send files out to for the overdue defaulted fines. So there was 1,623 of those out. We also do our own final notices, so there was 1,341 of those mailed. We received 8,581 charges in that year, and we finally were able to start issuing trials again now that some of our COVID closures and courts have resumed. So we did 2,530 of those and 1,150 early resolution notices. And those are informal meetings with the prosecutor to see if a resolution can be met prior to a trial taking place. These next couple of slides are those actually prepared by the Ministry of Attorney General, who governs us. And they'd like for us to share for anyone, staff within the POA or anyone who would have an interest in our business. So the local service realignment initiative, we were a download when the province was doing downloads of the local service agreement in the late 90s. The County of Renfrew took responsibility for POA in September of 2000, I believe it was. And so Under that local service alignment, the courts, took over any files that were formerly over at the Ontario Court of Justice, so that was transferred. The roles and responsibilities are set out in the Memorandum of Understanding, which is our guiding document. We can go on to the next slide, POA transfer agreements. So that just kind of goes on again, more about what the agreements involved and what our requirements were, what our facilities were, how we would run the business that we do. We can go on to the next one. There's the intermunicipal agreements, where a municipal partner provides local justice service on behalf of other municipalities. So you'll find maybe some of your local municipalities have agreements with our prosecutor, and maybe some municipalities will handle parking even at your own municipality where you'll pay there. Others, they hand it over to us to take payment and do any enforcement action rather than being done right at your local municipality. The Attorney General is not part of these intermunicipal agreements. That is strictly between the counties and the lower tiers. You see that a lot more in some of the larger cities with the red light cameras, the automated speed enforcement, things like that. And the landscape responsibilities in the POA court. So this is just kind of a visual site of where we have the Ministry of Attorney General, you have the oversight function, and then you have the municipal partners, us, who are doing the administrative function, and then we have our judicial function, the Ontario Courts of Justice. And in our courts, it is Justice of the Peace that are presiding, not judges. So they are an appointed position. They don't normally or necessarily have any legal background, but they do kind of a rigorous training to be able to preside. And the next slide is the roles and responsibility of the municipal partners. So kind of, as I was just saying, we administer and support functions at the trial level. The prosecution for ticketable offenses proceedings commence to adults, including parking. And then we go on after the cases have went through court or they've been convicted, then we go on to do the enforcement action on these fines. So that's important. And then the note down there is of interest. So the municipal partners keep all the POA fine revenues that are collected after the remittance of surcharges, special purpose funds, and judicial and technology prosecution and monitoring costs. So those stay here locally unless they fall under some of those categories. And then this is just kind of a little reminder that they like us to put out, and we do to our staff. Under the terms of the transfer agreement, municipal partners have liberty in how long they execute their function, as long as they provide at least the same level of service that the province had been providing prior to the transfer. And we consult with the ministry on a regular basis for any changes or guiding procedural guidelines and things like that. Now, the ministry's responsibility, they are our oversight, so we report back to them annually, and anytime that there may be any serious matter or something that will affect the court services function. So if we had to unexpectedly close, the COVID was a good example of that. There was a lot of work between us and the province to try and keep the administrative function going. The ministry continued. Again, just kind of an overview of their oversight and monitoring. So they are in charge of the policy and legislation, and we do the operational support. And we can go on to the next slide. We're there. The roles and responsibilities, the Ontario Court of Justice, and here is the elements of the Ontario Court of Justice. The judiciary provides independent adjudication, free from bias or influence. The judiciary liaisons with court managers and access to justice to ensure efficient handling of court business. And they are the ones that impose the fines. And then our last slide is just if anyone wants to reach out or contact the ministry, that's their contact information. And essentially that is about it for me.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions regarding POA? Councillor Donahue, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, through you, to Ms. Wilton. Very comprehensive grounding. I am curious to the fine revenue. Is there distribution to the lower tier municipalities wherein any of the fines are levied, or does that remain at the county?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Ashley mentioned two foundational documents. One is the Memorandum of Understanding that we have with the Province of Ontario, which really is our agreement to accept this responsibility and administer the court in accordance with their rules and guidelines and policies and regulations. The second one is this local side agreement. And at time of transfer, so that's October of 2000, just prior to that, we had to ensure that we engaged with all lower tier municipalities. The City of Pembroke and the Township of South Algonquin is a participant as well. And essentially, the agreement was that we would take care of the responsibility for POA for your municipal jurisdiction. And the offset to that is we'll keep the fine revenue. So we'll pay for all the costs through whatever fine revenues that we collect. So the provincial offenses, so we'll talk about this next month when we get into budgets for this department and all departments coming to this committee. But the POA department is actually a net revenue generator in that on an annual basis, we collect more POA fine revenue than we actually spend in salaries, benefits, office expenses, court expenses, paying the justice of the peace, et cetera, et cetera. So it's only one of two departments in the entire corporation of the county that is a net revenue generator. The other one is Renfrew County Place, and that's external lease revenue that's coming in to support all of the costs of that particular building. So that's a net revenue generator for the county as well. But yeah, we keep the POA fine revenue, and we offset that against all of the expenses within the POA department. Thank you.
Thank you for that supplementary.
So POA also is assigned the Court of Jurisdiction for municipal bylaw then as well. And all that I'm raising here is one of the things that we are facing, certainly in my municipality, I think in others, is enforcement of bylaws. And oftentimes the revenue that is generated from fines and sanctions is some of the offset against the cost of enforcement. So it's one of the challenges that we have in the lower tier. Now I suppose that is offset by the diminished revenue needs of the county based on the net revenue that is coming into the county from the POA.
And I can add that if it's set under a bylaw code, so if it's your local bylaw that's charged under, those revenues do go back to, with the exception of the service fees there.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. That is
quarterly basis that goes out.
Okay, so if they are provincial or federal statutes or regulations, then it remains with the county. If it is by law, that is ultimately the lawmaking authority of each of us in our individual capacity, that does flow to the, okay, thank you.
After 12 years, that's the first time I've ever heard that. All right, anything else on POA? Seeing none, all right. I will pass this back to you for the rest of your report. Thank you, team. Good job. Are you going to let them go back to their jobs?
No, I'm going to make them stay for all of this.
Oh.
They want to, though. It's not that I'm making them do it.
You keep telling yourself that. Great job, by the way.
Madam Chair, item number 2 under information. As I mentioned in our orientation overview, yet again, we're reporting another retirement. And again, within the finance department. So Mr. Gordon Tom, who's been an accounting technician with us for over 21 years. So Gord joined us at the time when the entire social housing portfolio was downloaded to the County of Renfrew. And at that time, Mr. Tom joined the corporation as an accounting technician. And he has provided his notice of retirement. And we certainly wish him and his family well as they move on to this next phase of life. We're very pleased to advise that Jolinda Douglas was the successful candidate to replace Mr. Tom, and she began her new duties this week on Monday morning. And so we're going through an onboarding exercise with that individual. It's a super busy time of the year. We're approaching year end, as all municipalities are. And with sort of that conversion to a brand new audit team who does not know us and does not know our processes and people and internal workings, it's going to be a very challenging shop for us over the next couple of months. And so Ms. Douglas will have to very quickly come up to speed for some of those responsibilities. Mr. Tom will stay with us till the end of February and get us to that through the year-end process for the Housing Corporation and for our housing portfolio, and then that responsibility will transfer on to Ms. Douglas. Item number 3, just information for you, is that a number of years ago the county adopted a resolution where we would automatically ensure that our travel reimbursement policy is updated in alignment with the CRA notice on the maximum mileage allowance per kilometer rate. So just so that you're aware, in 2023, that will move to 68 cents per kilometer for the first 5,000 and 62 cents per kilometer thereafter. And so that's really just notice to all members of this committee. Item number 4 is Provincial Offences Administration workload, and we do on a monthly basis just bring forward to you whether or not Ashley is in attendance and providing a very fulsome background or orientation into the POA court, but we do provide information on our activity levels within that courtroom service. You'll see that the totals for 2022, total charges at 9,723 are 1,100 charges more than we had last year. Those members of this committee who have been here for a few years will recall that certainly during the pandemic and just prior to the pandemic, we really noticed a significant decline in charges where we had been up to the 9,000 or 10,000 level, and those charges dropped off about 20%. And so for 2022, you'll notice that we're moving back up toward that roughly that 10,000 charges per year level. So charges ultimately will translate into fine revenue, which will ultimately translate into revenue for the County of Renfrew to offset our POA expenses. So that's good news for us. The more charges typically translate into higher POA revenue volume. The next actually 2 items, item 5 and 6, are somewhat interrelated. During COVID, the Ministry of the Attorney General had a complete shutdown of provincial court services right across the province. And gradually moved toward a hybrid, gradually moved toward a virtual model where the Justice of the Peace, the prosecutor, and the defendant could all participate in judicial hearings virtually via Zoom. We were one of the leading court offices that engaged with that virtual technology early on. In order to attempt to move the volume of charges through our court as quickly as possible. However, now that we have returned, it's really returned to a hybrid model, so you have a choice to appear physically in court or to appear virtually. Sometimes our Justice of the Peace does not appear physically, but virtually, but in most cases physically. But the next item on your report, item number 6, really speaks to the fact that across Ontario, there has been a shortage of justices of the peace for a number of years. And that has drastically limited our ability to process the charges that are before us. And item number 5, you'll see in the month of December, we still have 1,426 charges in backlog. That's a combination of court closure during COVID, but a lot of that is directly related to the number of justices of the peace that are available to us. And you'll see in the month of December, although we have 6 court days scheduled, we had to cancel 3 of them. And we canceled them because there's a lack of justices of the peace for Eastern Ontario. there were 41 shortages facing the province last year. And so item number 6 then speaks to the fact that on December the 21st, we received a notice from the Ministry of the Attorney General that they had appointed 28 justices effective December the 29th, 2022. And in fact, our municipal prosecutor, Ms. Jennifer Grant, was one of those who received an appointment to be a Justice of the Peace for the Pembroke area, which is really good news that we have somebody locally that will operate as a Justice of the Peace. The problem is, as Ashley mentioned, there's a rigorous training program which takes about 12 months to complete. So although the appointment was made, those individuals will not be available to POA courts for about 12 months. So December of 2023, we can expect to see some of this pressure start to be relieved. However, there are still a tremendous number of vacancies across the province, and so there's another recruitment process, Ashley tells me, that's going to take place in 2023, which means those justices won't be available until 2024. So we're still playing catch up in the province of Ontario. I expect that this backlog will continue throughout 2023, and you'll continue to see a number of courts canceled in Renfrew County every month throughout the entire year. So that was really items number 5 and item number 6 together. Insurance rates, item number 7. On December the 19th, we received notice of our annual premium renewal. We do a lot of work beginning in about August or September in providing information to our underwriters so that they can have a look at our business and our risk and provide us a renewal package. And we received that notice on December the 19th. That renewal is increasing by 16.8% for the upcoming year. So unofficially, or rather officially, dealing with all of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus treasurers, the renewals that have come in or came in prior to the end of the year were averaging between 15 and as high as 38%. So do we take some solace in the fact that ours is on the lower end of the scale at 16.8? It still seems to be certainly out of touch with some of inflationary pressures, but these underwriters are certainly still dealing with trying to reconcile premiums to their exposure and their payouts right across the spectrum. They're not just underwriters in Ontario or in Renfrew County. These are worldwide entities that have business interests, around the globe. So their premium adjustments are very reflective, not just of the risk of us as a client, but the environment within which their industry is operating. For some history, we engaged our current underwriter, current broker, Jardine Lloyd Thompson, in 2012. With our first contract had a 3-year premium rate freeze. So we enjoyed that for those first 3 years of our engagement with them, and we were able to negotiate an extension of that rate freeze for the next 3 years. So our premium dollars only changed based on our property values that we were having them insure, but the rate per 100,000 of property value or the rate for liability insurance didn't change. So from 2015 through till 2019, our entire premium changed by 1% over that entire period of time, and that's directly a result of our negotiation with our broker to maintain some cost savings for us within this program. Those years were the insurance industry would call them soft markets, but we changed, and we're now in a very hard insurance market. There are very few players in the business, and their cost structure with some of the natural disasters that they are providing coverage for has been increasing pretty substantially. So since 2020, our dollar premium has increased 39%, including this announcement that we're making today. So that's roughly 13% a year for those years. So we had some good years. We had some very good years from 2012 up to 2019, and we've had some tough years over the last number of years. But I would think that even in your own municipalities, and certainly in the Ontario municipal sector, 13% is our average since 2020 is probably enviable compared to the position that some municipalities find themselves in. So we have a great rating. We are a very low business risk, if you will. We aggressively manage all of our claims. We don't pay out a nickel without kind of fighting all the time. That's just the nature of how we've structured our business. And so we are a preferred client in the industry, which is why we had such good success when we changed in 2012. So our 13% average is really reflective of what's going on in the insurance industry in Ontario. Will we see some correction? We're all longing for that. In talking with my peers, there's lots of municipalities that are thinking about, well, let's go out to tender, let's issue a request for proposal, and let's see what the pricing is like out there. I would recommend, from my perspective, don't do it, because you will not like what you see. It is still an extremely hard market. Even your current provider, if you go to an RFP, will take the opportunity to realign their premiums with their business risk, and you might find yourself paying even higher premiums than you might if you just maintained your existing business relationship with your provider. So there will be a time where we can go out to the marketplace and try and find better pricing, but I would suggest that now is still not the time for us to do that. Item number 8 is a letter we received December the 14th from the Chief Financial Officer of MPAC indicating that our fee, and we pay the MPAC fees for the entire county of Renfrew, we do that at the upper tier level, will be $1,540,414 compared to $1,541,699 last year. A very slight decrease of 0.08 of 1%. How is this calculated? The MPAC is telling you, or I've relayed the information, that there is no overall increase in the municipal levy across Ontario. So how come we're going down? And we pay our share of the entire municipal levy based on the assessed value in Renfrew County in comparison with the assessed value right across the province of Ontario. So that's going to tell you that in Renfrew County, we've dropped in our share of the assessment compared to the rest of Ontario. There is no reassessment that's taking place, and you'll be aware of the fact that we're still operating our 2016 market value assessments. So this change is a direct relation in our CVA growth, new assessed value in Renfrew County, as opposed to what is the CVA growth taking place across all of Ontario. So we're slightly lower, not by much. We're pretty much keeping on pace with the rest of Ontario, but we've dropped just slightly. Item number 9, really just an update that, again, following item number 8, in anticipation that MPAC will conduct a market value assessment update. Traditionally, municipalities could expect once every 4 years there would be a market value reassessment. So in other words, an assessor is looking at your home and understanding what its market value is and updating your assessment information based on market values. So we expect that to be done once every 4 years, and whatever that change is, we phase that in over a 4-year period. That hasn't happened. We're still operating on 2016 values. So as a group of treasurers in Renfrew County, and in anticipation that the next reassessment when it comes is going to be huge, it's going to be very significant, we wanted to clean up the assessment roll. So we took the opportunity in 22 to engage with a company, Municipal Tax Equity Consultants, to do an entire audit of all properties within our assessment role and clean up any anomalies that they would uncover prior to the next reassessment happening. So we want to clean up the role, and then when we deal with the next big reassessment, we're going to have some clean data to be able to do that. So we engaged with NTE. It was provided for in the 2022 County of Renfrew budget for about $22,000, and we've attached an appendice where the municipal revenue increase because of this audit study that we took place will be $60,000 per year. So a good investment. We spent $22,000 once and will enjoy an increase in municipal revenue of about $60,000 for year one and moving forward. So it was good to get the roll cleaned up and identify these roughly 100 properties, and we're all waiting for market value assessment to take place. Item number 10, Board of Health. On December the 16th, we received a letter from the Chair of the Board of Health, and pursuant to Section 72 of the Health Protection and Promotion Act, the amount the Board of Health estimates will be required to defer its expenses for the year will be $1,767,955 for the County of Renfrew in 2023 versus what the levy requirement was in 2022, and that is a 2% increase. When we get talking about budgets next month, we'll talk about a risk that we have as the municipal corporation of the County of Renfrew with public health levies, but that's not for today's discussion. So we'll just simply say that it's increased by 2%, and that is our increase that we will include in the budget that we'll review next month. Item number 11, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Every municipality receives a financial indicator review, a document, and essentially they've determined that there are a number of indicators of municipal financial health, and so they will compare on page 55 Renfrew County's position with respect to our peers. So they compare us to upper tier counties in the southern regions of the province. So for example, on page 55, if we were to consider our position of total reserves and reserve funds as a percentage of municipal expenses, we have reserves that equal about 45.2% of those expenses, and our peers, either as a median at 51% or as an average of 55%, we're somewhat comparable. We're in good financial shape with respect to reserves, but we're slightly lower than our peers for other upper tier counties in Ontario. And there are a number of other indicators there. We're all in low risk or good financial health. The second one from the bottom, which is our asset consumption ratios. It essentially speaks to the age of our assets, the net age, historical value, less depreciation, what our net book value of our assets are. And that sits at asset consumption ratio of 58%, and we are slightly higher than our peers, roughly 10% higher of our peers. That speaks to our asset management plan and our 10-year capital asset renewal plans, and so we are investing significant dollars in the 2023 budget, and we have in the last number of years since about 2014 in ensuring that renew the assets that we are responsible for. And again, next month at our budget meetings for committee and budget workshop, we'll review our long-term financial plan, our capital asset plans, and our renewal strategies for all of our assets on a go-forward basis. That takes us to item number 12, and the last of the information items, the Employee and Family Assistance Plan. The committee members who were here in 2022 will recall that we went out to a tender process early in the year, and we engaged then with a company called Inkblot Technologies for a 2-year period for 2023 to the end of 2024. And as of January 1, 23, all county staff and their families are able to engage directly then with Inkblot for all of the services that they provide county staff. And I believe I saw some data that showed that we had 57 or 59 employees already in January who had reached out and engaged with this particular service. Madam Chair, maybe I'd stop there at the end of information.
Yes, please, thank you. All right, so we go back. Information item number 1, I think we've covered. Number 2, the retirement of Mr. Tom. Exciting for him, sad for us, I guess. But congratulations to Jalenda. Number 3, CRA mileage rates. I think we better all take this back to our local tiers, because the last time we did ours, it was 61 cents. And when I read this, I was like, oh, gotta change it again. Number 4, POA workload. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment that pleased to see an increase. I think that it is fair to always have the caveat when we're discussing this. I am pleased to see a diminishment in fines, which would generally be indicative of a decrease in the level of offense. But where this is reflected, the last financial report we saw was for June, but I know for the year-end 2021, our POA fines were significantly under budget. 2022, I am anticipating they are same, even though you will see that the offenses issued has increased to just over 1,000, or just over 1,100 in fact. But just in going back through previous reports, our high water mark in 2018, there were 12,000 offenses issued. In 2019, there were 10,000 offenses issued. In 2020, it dropped to 7,800. So I'm not entirely sure. I know that we have corresponded with the Ministry of the Attorney General. I do not believe that we have had a response. I do not know within each of the municipalities whether there is a diminishment in the number of bylaw offenses that have been issued. But even with the increase of 2022 over 2021, we are still only 75% of what was the high point, and certainly in the terms of that I've been sitting on the county council. But even in a 3-year average, which was at least 10,000, we are still below that threshold. So it does make me question what the level is of enforcement on provincial offenses as opposed to municipal infractions.
Perhaps it's time to send another letter. Jeff? If we got staff direction?
Yes, we would.
Yeah. What does everybody think about sending another letter to the Attorney General? Because we didn't get any response, not even a thank you for your letter. Councillor Donahue.
I would so move, Madam Chair, and I think that it will not take a great deal of resource if we just remove the date of the previous one, amend the signature of the warden that would be signing said letter. I think that the body of it can be exactly as it was. There might be some dating to change within the body of it, but other than that, I am assuming that that letter is on file, and I expect that the parameters of the letter have changed a little. I think 2 years ago, if memory serves, was when that was issued. At that point, I think we might have been at the bottom of, I think at that point, we were only about 2/3 of what our average was. So I would so move that correspondence be sent expressing concern about the number of offenses.
Councillor Doncaster?
Yeah, and the other thing that's just as concerning is the accounts receivable, the amount of money there, and so and we're not alone. It was on CBC just not long ago with a county with $14 million in outstanding fines. So advocating for more and different collection tools and ways to collect that money would be important also.
Excellent. So we'll send a letter under, the warden isn't in the room, but it's okay. If we vote, he'll have to sign it.
Yes, I will second that.
Okay, excellent. All in favor? Perfect. All right. Make it happen. Maybe harsher language this time. You have not responded to our letter of 2021? Yes. All right, moving on. Number 5. Number 6, the appointment of the Justices of the Peace. And I knew that Councillor Brose was going to put his hand up, and I'm going to tell you what he's going to say. He's going to say, why don't they continue just recruiting now if it's going to take 12 months?
That was what I was going to say. I'm glad to hear that at least they've appointed a local person
Yep.
as a Justice of the Peace who understands our community and our county. But they still have a long way to go to fill the vacant positions. And my concern, just as the letter would indicate, is that what's going to happen to some of these outstanding fines that go on beyond 2 years, and will we ever collect?
Right, absolutely. This has been, for our new members, this has been stuck in our craw. James and I attended something at Roma or AMO where they were talking about the need for these justices of the peace. So they did a whole intake of new applicants, and then if you go to the website, you can't apply right now. Well, if it's going to take you a year to onboard people, just as Greg said, just have an ongoing recruitment. It doesn't mean that you have to hire them, but at least if you found good candidates, you could onboard them, or say, you know, we're going to start you in June, because we're going to see more and more and more retirements. So yeah, that's why I said the question instead of James, because we've both been railing against this. Anything, and I couldn't agree more that it's a local person. It's awesome. All right, is there anything? Yes, Councillor Giardini.
That sounds like possibly another letter is required.
Okay, I'm on board with you. Let's leave it until these letters go, and then we'll address the Justice of the Peace. But I like where you're going with it. Yeah, or one of us could ask the question at the Bear Pit at Roma. Might not be a bad question in public, because we're all in this together. Something to think about. All right, anything further? Number 7, the insurance rates. That it is crazy. Number 8, MPAC. Number 9, the municipal tax equity consultants. Number 10, the Board of Health. Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. While certainly this is, I was going to say committee will recall, we are a newly formed committee, but at the September meeting of both Finance and Administration and County Council, September 2022, or each year, that is when the targets are set for the budget to begin the budget process. In September past, the levy target was 2.5%. The standing item, I think, in long-term financial plan is that departmental increases, operating increases, be restricted to 2%, but in no case exceeding 2.5%. Maybe a challenge this year. So certainly the 2% request, or not even request, demand essentially, we've been advised of the monies required at 2% is not unreasonable. However, what I want, and I just finished 8 years on the Board of Health, and there has been some substantial turmoil. You note on the chart on page 53 of today's report that goes all the way back to 1987, you can see how from time to time the province seems to have been quite capricious funding partner in this. going all the way back to 1998 when they provided precisely 0% of the funding. In any event, what I am speaking to now, you'll note in that chart, the top 4 years, 23, 22, 21, 20, are all shaded in a different color, indicating the 70-30 split from what had been the 75-25. It had been 75-25 right up until about the time of the dual tragedies of Walkerton and SARS, back to back in 2002, 2003, wherein it shook, I think, the province loose once again and returned to 75-25. In any event, it is returned to 70-30 right now. In that 4 years, I just wanted to bring to Finance and Administration Committee's attention, you'll note on page 50, wherein it identifies within the mandatory base programs the expectations of an additional $13,322 from the province this year. There's a $40,000 increase from the obligated municipalities. Over the 4 years that the funding formula, cost share formula has changed, you'll note at the bottom of page 51, and I do apologize for having everyone jump back and forth in their reports, but bear with me 1 second, I'm having trouble here. It says that the rate, the effective rate of 2% is in fact, when divvied up over the 0% that was requested last year, is in fact 1. What I will say is, even accounting for the cost share that the province is now providing mitigation funding to cover that, it is somewhat indemnifying the obligated municipalities. After that cost share was split, the municipal levy has increased over those 4 years by 10%. The proportion that is provided by the province has increased 1%. So after adjusting even for the cost share formula, the obligated municipalities levy has increased 10%, the provincial contribution has increased 1%. There is a growing inequity. I know over the last 2 years of my term with the Board of Health, there were several different health units in correspondence that was submitted to all 34 of the health units that were essentially advising that the municipal levy was going to be commensurate, the municipal levy increase was going to be commensurate with the provincial contribution increase. That is not the case. The dollar figures in that 4 years, the municipal obligation has risen just under $200,000. The province has risen just under $53,000. This is after we've already adjusted to the new funding cost split. So I just wished to bring that to committee's attention and to council's at the end of the month. 2% is not certainly unreasonable, but in terms of meeting that cost share, it is becoming more inequitable. The last point that I'll make, you'll also note on here that it says it's only 1% increase over what the municipal obligation was 20 years ago. Well, in fact, the math is wrong there. It's 3%. It's about 3.18%. Of course, over 20 years, that still doesn't seem like much. Keep in mind, though, 20 years ago, the cost share was 50-50. So it seems like it's not necessarily as persuasive, perhaps, as the author of this report might have believed it to have been. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Anything further on the health unit? Number 11, the FIRs. And number 12, the Employee and Family Assistance Program. Councillor Donahue.
Sorry, Madam Chair, my comments were actually, I was slow to my holster. So it was on 12. I just wanted to speak to the information item vis-a-vis the reserves as a percentage of municipal expenses. While certainly we have somewhat lost ground to our comparators, to our peer group, that is in the lower tier, Southern Ontario lower tier communities. You will note that reserves as a percentage of municipal expenses in that 5-year period have increased at the County of Renfrew by 50%. It was 30% of our expenses in 2017. It is now 45%. And in fact, the disparity, the gap, the increase across our comparators is even larger. It's gone from 31% in 2017 to 51% in 2022. So just for the purposes of the Finance and Administration Committee, I think it's important to keep that into consideration, that we're rapidly approaching half of our annual expenses are now sitting in reserves.
Thank you for that. Anything on the EAP? I see none. So lunch is here, so I'm going to make this democratic. Who wants to stop before we get to resolutions and bylaws and have lunch? Who wants to plow on through for the last 5 or 6 items? You want to plow through? Everybody good to plow through? James spoke up first. Yeah. And it's not a hot lunch, so we're all good. Okay. Yes, Dave. Okay, let's plow through. Go for it.
Item number 13, and the CAO has asked that we read these resolutions to get them onto the record. And so item number 13, I'll begin with this signing authority, Bank of Montreal. And that recommendation is that the Finance and Admin Committee recommends to County Council that the signing authority for the Corporation of the County of Renfrew Bank of Montreal accounts, those are our RAG accounts, be updated to remove Paul Morrow and Debbie Robinson and to add Craig Kelly and Peter Emo, and further that 2 of the following 4 names have signing authority: Peter Emo, Craig Kelly, Jeffrey Foss, or Daniel Burke. And essentially, Madam Chair, this is really just with the retirement of Mr. Morrow and the change to a new warden of Mr. Emo. We need to reflect that in our banking agreements.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Yon, seconded by Councillor Mayville. Any discussion? All in favor? That carries.
Item 14, Madam Chair, of course, we are a member of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and so there are membership fees that are required as part of that membership, and so the recommendation is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that the 2023 membership fee to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario in the amount of $9,811.42, including HST, be approved. You'll note in the background that that is a 2.58% increase over our membership fee in 2022.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Brose, seconded by Councillor Yon. Discussion. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's a technical question more so than the impetus of the motion itself. And I know as we progress through the year, we're going to see numerous times results of tenders and awards, et cetera. So this, within the body, says the membership fee for 2023 is $9,811.42, including HST. So do we have a standard on reporting, i.e., when we report, because I think when we see, I'm thinking of the boxes that sooner or later committee will see, particularly as it pertains to public works. There is a breakdown of budgeted costs, bid costs, et cetera. But it is often said this is net of any HST. Then there is also the net HST. I'm not certain if all of the committee would be aware, the net HST for municipalities is not 13%, it is 1.76%. So when we see these things, these numeric reports, these dollar value reports, and it says including HST, is that inclusive of net HST or gross HST?
Madam Chair, in this situation, it is gross HST.
Yeah, not to belabor today's meeting, I think, but at a future meeting, maybe we'll have that for a discussion of what our reporting templates are, because ultimately, it is going to be an inflated number. I mean, this is a relatively small number as county expenditures go on being under $10,000, but ultimately the difference between 13% and 1.75% is not insubstantial.
Gotcha. All right, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Doncaster.
Yeah, sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. I just, Councillor Donahue opened the door for me, so I just wanted to point out that the GST, HST rebate or reduction for municipalities is a direct result of advocacy and lobbying from FCM directly to the federal government.
Thank you for your service. Whenever he can get FCM into something, you know he will. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Through you, thank you to FCM and Councillor Doncaster. Can you get us back our annual exemption on taxes, that 1/3?
Oh, yeah.
That would be, yeah, that's the next goal. Thank you.
Okay.
I second that. All right, now I'll call for the vote. All in favor after that shameless plug about FCM. And number 15, please.
Madam Chair, number 15, again, I'll read the recommendation that the Finance and Administration Committee approves for the Treasurer to continue to pay the Municipal Employer Pension Centre of Ontario, MEPCO, the 2023 employer municipal contribution in the amount of $3,405.26, which is calculated using our 574 OMERS employees times the rate of $5.25 per employee. That is inclusive of HST. The background, of course, is that MEPCO is a nonprofit corporation that was created by AMO to provide pension expertise to the employer representatives on the OMERS Sponsors Corporation and Admin Corporation. So that is our contribution to ensure that the guidance that is provided at the board level for OMERS reflects the employer position as opposed to only the employee position. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can I have a mover and seconder, please, to get it on the floor? Councillor Giardini, second by Councillor Donahue. Discussion. All in favor? Thank you. And onwards.
We are into bylaws, Madam Chair. So item number 16 is a bylaw, corporate policies and procedures for the human resources area. Recommendation is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that corporate policy A07, which is criminal record check for prospective employees, A10 staffing, B10 acting pay, E01 hours of work, an overtime, as well as J01 being the service awards program be approved, and further that a bylaw to amend bylaw 6303 being a bylaw to establish human resources corporate policies and procedures for the County of Renfrew be adopted. Madam Chair, we have we have 5 policies coming forward. We, within the Human Resources Department, as Mr. Belmore mentioned in his orientation, on an annual basis, we are attempting to ensure that we have a staff member who is reviewing all of our corporate HR policies to ensure that we are in compliance with Occupational Health and Safety or the Employment Standards Act, et cetera, et cetera. So as those documents change, we want to ensure that our policies are always reflective of what is the law governing employees in the province of Ontario. So A07, the major change that's taking place there is the Fixing Long-Term Care Act of 2021 has created some newer requirements for individuals to have a criminal record reference check. We wanted to include that wording within this policy, and there are certainly some definitions that have been added for clarity in the policy document itself. A10 staffing, Again, really just wanted to ensure that our document is reflective of our current practice. The last update was in 2009, so it certainly was due for a review and a refresh in accordance with our current practice. And again, some references and definitions were added for clarity. I'll skip item C just for now, going down to item D, which is EO1, hours of work and overtime. Again, wanted to ensure compliance with the Employment Standards Act language on overtime. And item number E, which is our service awards program, wanted to ensure that we updated that to reflect our current practice. So since COVID took place, we have not been able to meet in person for our annual Employee Service Awards banquet. And so we have adjusted our program to essentially show recognition to those employees in a different methodology. We're using really just a gift card to show our appreciation for their long service at 10, 15, 20, 25 years of service, rather than our former process when we could meet in person, and wanted to ensure that was reflected in the policy. Hopefully at some point in the future, and as members of this committee historically will know, we do wish to get back to that in-person process once again. And hopefully some of these current pandemic challenges may not be with us in the same way as they are currently or have been. Item C, which is B10 acting pay. This is an item that a rewrite of the policy based on discussions that the CAO has had with the members of the senior leadership team. The prior policy essentially allowed for acting pay within 10 contiguous days of service in an acting role to a higher classification. And so at the SLT level, we viewed that as being, that time frame as being quite short, and we wanted to ensure that those people that were stepping into those acting roles had a longer length of service to be engaged in that role before being compensated with the acting pay premium, if you will. And so the changes in item C, the acting pay policy, are reflective of those discussions and certainly are more in line, I would say, Craig, with our peers in Eastern Ontario and how they are dealing with the acting pay process. So, Madam Chair, that is item 16.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Donoghue, seconded by Councillor Doncaster. Discussion. Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am pleased, actually, one of my questions was on the final policy on the service awards, whether we had rendered to the dustbin the banquet, but the intent is not. I always thought that the banquet provided a fairly unique opportunity for cross-pollination across the corporation to bring all of the departments together and to see the scope, the vastness of the services that are provided, both in terms of the service itself, but also in terms of the geography of our community. So I'm very pleased to hear that this hopefully is a temporary revision and that we do return to that. The other question that just occurred to me, though, because I note that policy B10 is fairly durable. It's 20 years. I'm presuming, however, though, I shouldn't presume, I guess. I guess my question is there a standing review date to various policies? Right now, this is the first revision that will have been done since '03. But is there a regular review of these corporate policies that they only elevate to committee or to council ultimately if there is a proposed revision, but so as to remain current, that eyeballs are put on these on a frequent basis to say, yes, that still is a valid and no changes are recommended?
Looked at me like, I'll answer that. I'm like, you don't think I'm going to answer it?
Well, always the opportunity, Madam Chair. So that's an excellent point Councillor Donoghue makes. Specifically in this case, with respect to human resource policies, as I mentioned, our goal is to ensure that our policy remains reflective of the legal, legislative, regulatory framework that we are employing that we employ our staff, and that our policies are reflective of provincial law. To that end, some of our newer committee members may not recognize, but we've had an entire revamp or restructuring of our HR department, which really took place just in 2021. So we're approaching sort of the 2-year mark. When I talk about brand new staff, our entire HR department are brand new staff. And one of the goals that is on Mr. Belmore's performance management document for 2023 is the assurance that all of our corporate policies are reviewed on an annual basis, even if there are no revisions required. But what we want to see is the review date being updated to ensure that in 2023, all those policies have been reviewed and signed off. And any revisions, of course, have to come to this body and to this chamber to ensure that we have council approval of what the changes would be. But the revisions are a requirement, and so Mr. Belmore is very aware of that new assignment, and his team will be working on that throughout 2023. Thanks.
Greg smiled at you when you turned around, but while you were talking, he was like this. Yes, Councillor Donahue, supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So presumably then the template will be slightly amended as well, so that we would have a review date and a revision date side by side. Excellent, thank you. I assume from the nodding that is the affirmative, Madam Chair.
And he's obviously really looking forward to it. All right, with that, is there anything further? Councillor Brose, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to share with the rest of the committee, I don't know if anybody else applying for the vulnerable sector check has had any issue with it, but I've been asked for more information. I've been told that you have to be more than just a person of contact. You have to be in a position of authority or trust relative to these persons. I don't think the person reviewing my application, because I sent the support letter and the policy, I don't think they're aware that, talking to Mr. Belmore, that there was a provincial change to the Long-Term Care Act.
Mine went through tickety-boo. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine, too, was perfunctory, simply followed. I'm wondering if because there were several different boxes, and I did find a few of them that I was uncertain, presumably that mine was trouble-free. I did, in fact, check the right one. It might be worth, because I think I actually took screenshots as I was working my way through, just in case something such as Councillor Brose had suggested. So maybe I'll even have a sit down with him offline and just review what each of those triggering mechanisms may have warranted. Either that, or I have occasionally been given to think that there are some sketchy details about my colleague from North Algonquin to Wilberforce, so it could be entirely justified.
I was going down that road too.
Those are the two options, and I just wanted the committee to be aware that those are the two options.
We don't know his background. We don't know where his hands have been. James, or just pop into the Killaloe detachment. They might be able to do it for you faster than. Oh yes, Councillor Yan.
I actually was at the Killaloe PP detachment this week. They no longer do them. They must be done online. So I completed mine last night, and we'll see what happens.
James, don't go to the Killaloe detachment. They no longer do them. Councillor Doncaster.
The Deep River Police Service will do them for you.
Or pop next door maybe before you leave and see if they, maybe some of the larger detachments are doing them. What's James going to do then? Okay. All right, is there anything further on number 16? Alrighty then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And finally, number 17, please.
Madam Chair, item 17 is a human resource information system, and again, I will read the recommendation that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends that County Council adopt a bylaw to enter into a service agreement with Nortech Solutions, doing business as WorkZoom for a 3-year period from February 1, 2023 to January 31, 2026. Madam Chair, lots of background there, and certainly for our newer committee members. We applied for and received some funding from the Province of Ontario. The Municipal Modernization Program, intake number 2, provided us with some funding to conduct our digital strategy review, and Chris Rinn, as the IT manager, was reviewing some of the work that was done on our digital review by a company called the Perry Group. There were a number of recommendations, as Chris mentioned. There was 42 recommendations for us to consider. Subsequent to that review, there was Municipal Modernization number 3, was another round of funding available to municipalities for digitally enhancing some of the procedures that we had in place as municipalities. We applied to that particular funding envelope and were successful again. In March, the Perry Group presented the entire digital strategy to County Council, and a month later, the senior leadership team met to review the 42 projects that were listed in that review and attempt to prioritize them, and to also add some our estimates of what we could reasonably attempt to achieve within the funding target dates. So Municipal Modernization number 3, you had to engage with an organization and commit funds by the deadline of February the 28th, 2023. So one of the projects that the senior leadership team recommended and council approved was moving forward with a digital human resource information system. We don't have one here at the County of Renfrew, so we have a number of Excel-based, PDF-based, workflow-based systems that manage our documentation, but we do not have a comprehensive digital system in order to have our HR team work with. And so that was one of the priorities we moved forward with, and the background lets you know that we did have a request for a proposal process, which was not entirely successful. We then followed up with a number of vendors that we knew were operating in Ontario that did not respond to our request for proposal, and went through quite a lengthy process to come to this recommendation today, that we engage with WorkZoom, and we do that prior to the February 28th, 2023 deadline, and that we apply the funding that we received from the province, from this Municipal Modernization Fund, against this project and move forward with digitizing the HRIS system. So, Madam Chair, perhaps I'll just leave it at that.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, there was a lot of background info on that report. Can I get a mover and seconder to get it on the floor, please? Councillor Brose, second by Councillor Giardini. Discussion. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Voss did identify the schedule, the progress that was made, the process that was followed, the progress that was made, and ultimately in May of last year, it was distilled to 6 particular prioritized issues. HRIS was one of them. On that same line was scheduling and payroll enhancements. I note in the report itself, it talks about that this had to be perhaps reduced in scope. Perhaps I misunderstood it. That was how I read it, that we did have to downscope what we were seeking here in order to meet the budget for that. So I am wondering 2 questions. How much diminished or reduced from what was initially anticipated have we had to establish to meet the funding envelope that was council approved? And what is the process, or rather, what is the progress on the other 5 items? I know that D&P just this week had one with respect to land division or land planning, put it that way, that was advanced as well. So I am wondering what the stat, because these were all 2022 as I understand. And in a brief discussion yesterday with Mr. Foss, there is some accounting contortions that we will have to go through because these are anticipated to be multi-year allocations. I don't want to get into that, but just what is the progress on each of these, and what was the downscoping that we had to anticipate for the HRIS?
Madam Chair, so to the best of my ability, I'll try and review that, or our progress to date. So from approval by council in 2022 of our priority projects, which we reasonably believe that we could move forward and meet the deadlines imposed by the province. That's the key in this whole process. There were 2 funding streams, Municipal Modernization Funding Stream number 2, which had a deadline of September the 30th, 2022, and Municipal Modernization number 3, which had a deadline of February the 28th of 2023. Those deadlines are immovable. So we met with the province and attempted to cajole them into a longer sort of planning horizon, because some of these projects were pretty significant. And from the start point of only, sort of spring of 2022, to get these projects moving forward was going to be quite a difficult task. However, the projects that went forward on Municipal Modernization number 2 was the agreement that we entered into with Esri Canada for GIS services, if you will. That was part of Municipal Modernization number 2, and again, that was essentially a 3-year service agreement that we were moving forward with contractually before the September 30th deadline. So we met that one. As well, there was a phone system that we had in place, communication system, that was recommended in that application, and we put that in place here at the County of Renfrew, kind of in addition to our renovation project to move all of our services into this building. We had we went from 60 staff to 100 staff in this building, so the phone system needed some expansion, and so that was taken care of, as well as some of the work that was done to broadcast or communicate with our public through what we're doing today and broadcasting live via YouTube and recording all of these sessions and broadcasting, something that we didn't do previously. So those 3 projects came through in Municipal Modernization number 2. We spent those 3 projects totaled $377,000, of which we're responsible for 35% of it, or $132,000, and we had budget in place to be able to provide for that. Municipal Modernization number 3, which has a deadline of next month, has 3 components to it as well. The HRIS component that we are looking at today, which really the anchor to that particular application. In addition to that, through the Development and Property Committee, there was a recommendation to move forward with a solution called Zen City, which was really a citizen engagement online system. And so that was part of our application, and that agreement was signed and invoiced, I think, in January, I believe. And the last one was we had a list of a number of information technology hardware or asset improvements across the corporation. And so there's a total of $73,000 in total that we applied for and received funding for through that program. So in total, fund number 3, we have $427,000 of total gross cost that are part of that funding application platform, and 35% of it is our cost. or $149,000. And as Councillor Donahue mentioned, there's going to be some accounting entries that need to be made because some of these agreements are 3-year agreements, and so we will only bring in the revenue, provincial revenue, and match that with the expenses over the next 3-year period. But those are the priority projects, if you will, over these applications. All of them have come before committee and council and been approved. The last one is today, is the HRIS agreement. Although it's taken a long time to get to this point, we are in a position with committee and council approval to enter into agreements to move forward before the February 28th deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on 17? I will call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you, committee. And the report as a whole. You're moving it? Okay, excellent. Moved by Councillor Giardini, seconded by Councillor Yon. Anything further? All in favor? And that passes. We have no, any new business? I see none. We have no closed meeting. Our next meeting is Thursday, February 16th, 2023. I hope to see you all at Roma in the next couple of weeks. Should be a good conference. If you want to see something really fun, I'm on a panel about asset management. It's going to be intriguing, I'm telling you. All right, so I'll ask for a mover and seconder to adjourn, please. Councillor Brose, seconded by Councillor Mayville. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.